Freeman. It's always cool to see players like that.
And to hit your opponent's face.
And to hit your opponent's
with a
face.
weapon 6 times.
And the funny thing is, he just said, I just equipped my sword. And just went, I'm guessing he meant like Uther's sword, or like Ashbringer into Uther. So that doesn't seem anticlimactic to me. That seems pretty cool. As a Pirate Warrior connoisseur, I do enjoy hitting my opponents in the face with weapons.
TJ approved. So the bans have come in, and as we expected, it's a double Warlock ban. We expected like a possibility of Jakattack going for something else, but it seems like he's come to the same conclusion, because that control OTK Paladin, even though on paper it seems like it should be able to beat a slower deck like a control Warlock, it's just that you're not able to get the coins off the Burgly Bully to do the whole OTK.
Yeah, it's called OTK Paladin, but realistically, the amount of times, even against slower decks, that you actually are able to accomplish the OTK is pretty low. But the deck does have just a lot of tools to be able to get through a lot of matchups. Just being able to remove a lot of stuff and having the minions and the pressure with cards like Tyrion and Zoth, as we see, and even Uther can apply pressure late game with just the buffed up hero power. Can put a lot of pressure on your opponent, and it's kind of the threat of it as well. If you know that the OTK is possible, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to maneuver around Burgly Bullies, and then later on in the game, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to maneuver around the hero powers and make sure you remove it every turn. So there is that added layer of sort of psychological warfare that you play with your opponent.
Yeah, that's right. If the person playing against the OTK Paladin doesn't have that much experience against it, it could be possible that they expend too many resources earlier on trying to avoid the possibility of losing to OTK, and then just lose straight up to the normal win condition, which is just control. And against aggressive decks, the most important card for the control paladin is, well, it used to be having an equality consecrate clear, but nowadays it's Cult Arms, because you can pull out Dirty Rat and 2 friends.
Yeah. Dirty Rats, sometimes it can be a little bit awkward if you pull out double Wild Pyromancer. I played the deck a lot, and the times where I pulled out double Pyromancer with Cult Arms, I was pretty sad, because that means that you have less opportunities to play spells, because if you play a single spell, it kills off both Wild Pyromancers. So that can be a little bit rough, but it also is just pressure, because Dirty Rat, pulling out a Dirty Rat for free from your deck and protecting those his little friends, as you called them, can allow you to put on pressure from your opponent. But Kin is playing the Dude Paladin, summoning a bunch of dudes, and a lot of lists vary quite a bit from the Dude Paladin. Of course, the goal is the same. It's to sort of flood your opponent and kind of buff them up, or go wide and make your board hard to remove. But he does have like a copy of Level Up.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few lists that run a 1-of it.
Yeah.
I think it's in response to like the Warlocks on ladder, just to have Level Up and Tarim are generally the win conditions against those. And they're just the best ways to capitalize on your dudes, because the Stegodon is not a guaranteed way to make them stick. Well, anyway, Jakattack has had a pretty good opener to like deal against these small minions. Just having the 2-drop into Coin Call to Arms is pretty much the best you can ask for.
Yeah. And also another part about the Dude Paladin that sort of separates it from Murloc Paladin is you sort of just have a bigger depth of threats, because every turn, even if you're just hero powering, that hero power can eventually become tough for your opponent to deal with. And it feels like they always have enough reload, but that part of the deck is also what makes it more difficult, I think, than Murloc Paladin to pilot, is because you have to space out your resources effectively.
Yeah.
You don't want to just go all in on the board. You want to try and, play just enough stuff to force removal out of your opponent, and then reload. And eventually, the theory is, if you're playing against control decks, you'll have enough reload to get through all their removal.
So Kin there, I guess he was feeling a little bit upset about his Mork Juggler, but it doesn't make a huge difference, because that Call to Arms presents a huge threat on board, and if he can't deal with that Pyromancer, it just takes 1 adaptation, which Jakattack, we were thinking he might have included for the OTK purpose, but it's also good for proccing the Pyromancer.
Yeah. Great for the Pyromancer in aggro matchups and in control matchups, like you mentioned. Just having, if you don't get enough coins, sometimes having one mana spell is enough to help get the job done when it comes to getting that extra hero power reset with Auction Master Beardo.
So Kin there had to trade off most of his board just to preserve at least one big minion, I'd say that only Stegodon or the Crystal Lion could have made that turn less painful for him, but he's definitely feeling quite behind now, whereas Kin, at least it seems like he'll be getting a decent Divine Favor in the coming turns.
Yeah.
This is not the turn you'd really want to play it though. Ideally, like you dump your whole hand and you have no expensive stuff and you draw as much as possible, but it seems like he won't have time to do it much later, if not Juggler or Divine Favor this turn.
Yeah, I think it has to come out this turn just because of how clunky his hand is. If maybe it was a little bit cheaper and he could unload more of his hand this turn, then he might go for it. But 3 mana, draw 3 cards is still quite
Cheaper
good.
Nourish, yeah.
Yeah.
We take those, but it does mean that Kin is pretty much ceding the board initiative to Jakattack. Yes, he has the Crystal Lion, but generally, if the Control Paladin is the one that's able to go wider on board, then they're able to deal with, well, whatever the Aggro Paladin can put out, because Aggro Paladin thrives when it goes wider rather than taller.
And his hand just keeps getting clunkier. With Vine Cleaver, Second Return, and Crystal Lion in hand, it's going to be tough for him to get value at a second Divine Favor. And also tough for him to develop a board that's going to be big enough. And Jakattack, this Righteous Protector, really doing some work that he was able to pick off from the Stonehill Defender. Because just blocking that 5 damage and allowing him to just push even more damage. These Loot Hoarders, they're going to get in for some deeps.
Right, and they're making the Sunkeeper Tyrant the most awkward play in the world here. It might be that Kin just plays out another Crystal Lion. But the funny thing here is that if you look at the board state, it's kind of like the game plans for the decks are completely reversed, right?
Yeah.
Aggro Paladin wins by going wide and then having the Righteous Protectors to make things awkward for the bigger minions on the other side of the board to trade. And that just shows you the power of Call to Arms.
Yeah. Wow. So Sunkeeper Terran picked up for Jakattack. Looks like that's...
I like it, yeah.
Attacking with the Loot Hoarder makes no difference because of the fact that he would have to attack the Divine Shield anyway, so he wanted to
draw first.
Evaluate his draw first. So I like that sequencing. I doubt that he would have found a play that would have changed his mind on Sunkeeper Terran that turn, but just to be sure, he made sure he drew with the Loot Hoarder first.
Yeah, and looks like Kin is forced to respond with his own Sunkeeper Tyrant. Having drawn the Squire makes it slightly less painful for him, but it definitely still just feels like playing from behind here.
Yeah, you know, he may be thinking about Vine Cleaver, but he would have to take 3 damage this turn. His 1/1s would likely get picked off anyway.
Yeah.
And he'd also be going down to 16 health with 9 damage being represented on board. So Jakattack, he said in his interview, in his final game to qualify for the Sydney Tour stop, that he just hit his opponent in the face a bunch of times with Control Paladin. And sometimes that can just win you games because the deck can pull out some good pressure when it needs to.
So Kin here forced to make a play that he needed to but really didn't want to, and now Jakattack has, I guess, no clean way of dealing with the Tarim. If he had an adaptation here to pair with the Wild Pyro and proc off the shield off the Squire would be fine, but honestly he's so ahead that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What do you think of starting with the Dirty Rat here?
I don't think it makes too much of a difference because you're very likely to pull something that's pretty inconsequential. And Lightfuse Stegodon being pulled out is just another threat that he doesn't have to worry about if Kin were to able to find a way back into the board. But that's pretty unlikely because Dude Paladin and aggressive Paladins in general don't really have a way to swing the board state back once they've lost it. Sometimes they can call to arms and unload their hand if they get a Righteous Protector to sort of protect their board. Then they can do that, but he's starting to fight back and takes a small semblance of control, but Consecration should be able to just stall this board state out.
Yeah, and he drew the second Call to Arms, but I don't think there are that many 2-drop or less minions left in the deck. Could be wrong, but I feel like we've seen double Loot Hoarder, double Plated Beetle.
I don't think there's
both
any.
Pyro. Did we see both Dirty Rat?
Yeah, because he pulled one out from the first Call to Arms, and then he played the second one from his hand.
So there's just nothing left.
There's absolutely nothing left.
Good thing that he hovered over it and then stopped.
Yeah, just would have been 4 mana, do nothing. Yeah, that's it. That's all the 2 drops. So Call to Arms is just a dead card in the hand.
So this might be the opportunity for Kin to come back into the game, because if Jakattack doesn't draw into, I guess, his Tyrion and N'Zoth to kind of refill the board, then he's 1 or 2 spells short from having the Pyro be able to clear something.
Yeah, now Kin is starting to develop quite a big board and spawning a lot of those Silverhand recruits. So if he does draw Second Life Use Stegodon or his level up, 1 copy of level up that he has, then he will be able to put on a good amount of pressure.
It's not often that you see the Control Paladin run out of steam and clear like this, because the other benefit of playing Call to Arms is that it thins your deck of these cards that you only want in the early game and lets you draw into your heavy hitters more consistently later on. So Jakattack is forced to play his 4-mana do nothing here.
4-mana Whirlwind.
And yeah, I guess conditional Whirlwind, and that feels awful because he's leaving so much stuff up. So what's it gonna? Oh my gosh! Wow. Okay, so he can deal 15 with a level up this turn, and then play another Wolf for 17. I don't think you have to swing with the Vine Cleaver here, because you can just use the Hero Power and Wolf and level that up.
Yeah.
Or, well, you can trade 1 dude in first, and then swing the Vine Cleaver, then level up, then play the Wolf, and then play Divine Favor.
That doesn't... Yeah, I suppose that may be the only opportunity he has to get value from Divine Favor, since Jakattack is low on cards.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's the play.
doesn't really have a way to immediately draw cards because Loot Hoarders are dead, and he's only going to be drawing a single card a turn, so...
So I think that's just going to be game, because Jakattack without having an Equality procer means that Equality on his own won't do anything, even if it's the next card off the deck.
Yeah, he would need 2 draws in order to do that, and he doesn't have time for 2 draws. I'm trying to think if Tyrion would save him, but I don't think it would. No, it would not. He would have 11 damage on board even if he swings, so...
That's actually insane. Okay, so Uther could bring him back up to 19, but that would still leave a lot on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would leave 17 on board, and then Kin would have the Wolf for the lethal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's that's insane. I can't believe that this game just turned right on its head. I thought Jakattack was so ahead after playing the Call to Arms turn, but I guess the failure to draw into a more efficient Pyro proc.
Yeah, and that is more than enough damage with the unidentified Maul, getting the Blessed Ball, which is going to give the extra attack. And Kane, in a surprising turn of events, takes the first game, and Jakattack sort of being punished for drawing a lot of those 2-drop minions in the early game because his second Call to Arms was completely useless, despite drawing it not too late in the game. He still had quite a few cards left in his deck. I think he still had about 10 cards left in his deck with absolutely no 2-drops. So, and again, just goes to show you sort of the strength of Dude Paladin in its ability to reload the board and take advantage of 1 dead turn, or I guess in that instance, a few dead turns from his opponent.
That's true. I mean, in theory, you'd think that refilling the board doesn't really do much if they're all just at 1 health, right? But if you can do it every single turn consistently, at some point your opponent will run out of just that 1 answer they need, and that's the only window you need to draw into your your level up or your Tarim, and then from that point on, your opponent just can't deal with it. So
yeah,
kudos to Muzzy for coming up with such an innovative deck.
Well, it was a deck that kind of has dominated Wild for a long time. So, like, the theory of the deck has existed for, I think, over a year. Because Wild has just even more tools to be able to buff up small minions with Quartermaster. It has Muster for Battle. And so sort of just additional ways the deck is more powerful. But, of course, in Standard, there's even limited tools to be able to answer that type of deck. And things are doing less powerful, decks are doing less powerful things overall. So I actually wasn't surprised when it started to make a a splash in Standard because of the fact that it's just been such a powerful deck in the Wild format for a while.
Right, it seems like the nerf to patches was one of the key things to give Dude Paladin a chance to shine, because without the aggro decks having a convenient answer for 1/1s, then that just lets you stick more of them sooner, and then that gave the aggro Paladin just the aggro advantage in general, because they have better ways of flooding the board.
Yeah.
So I feel like this control Paladin from Jakattack is going to be struggling throughout the entire series, because Kin still has his Secret Mage up, which has a pretty decent matchup, I'd say, against.
It's decent, but from experience playing the OTK sort of control Paladin, it does have quite a bit of game against Secret Mage. The biggest thing is whether or not you get Call to Arms off.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have the coin and can proc counterspell early, and whether or not your opponent draws the counterspell. I guess adaptation could be a way for you to have counterspell fodder.
Sure.
But it's about just kind of stifling the pressure early, because you do have ways to gain health as the game goes on if it goes late. But Secret Mage doesn't really let decks go late very often. And so that's where they sort of struggle. But if you can get through the early game at a reasonable life total and can stabilize enough to, say, draw into Uther, if you can play Uther almost at any point, as long as you're not dead the next turn, that 10 health swing immediately can be quite big. So
yeah, it seems like they have one of the best ways of stabilizing after dealing with the board. But looks like we're going to be going into the Secret Mage Mirror, and their lists are quite similar. But again, as we mentioned a while ago, Jakattack is running the Potion of Polymorph, whereas Kin has Ice Block.
Other than that, their lists are...
It's still a Spellbreaker as well?
Spellbreaker, yeah.
For Jakattack. But yeah, both of them running the one Pyroblast, the one Arcane Intellect. It's just 2 lackeys for Kin and 1 for Jakattack.
Yeah, and that's where the difference lies, just in that. So very similar. Ice Block can be a pretty big tool when you're playing against the mirror, because sometimes that just one additional turn can lead you to a win, especially in a world where if the board states are even early on in the game, when it's like an Aluneth battle, and you guys are getting close to fatigue, that Ice Block can sometimes make a difference.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't, because if you're in fatigue as well, then Ice Block is almost completely useless, because it won't proc on your own turn.
I totally know what you're talking about. In that world where the minion pressure is even, it's like if both players just draw, well, mostly burn or mostly minions, the mostly minions board state eventually leads to drawing into all burn afterwards. So it kind of just turns into a somewhat corrupted version of the Freeze Mage Mirror, where you just start throwing stuff at face, and in that case, Ice Block can be a huge help.
And Kin's big decision point there was after he'd played the Kirin Mage and knew that it was likely a counterspell, which secret he wanted to throw away the most. Was it Explosive Runes, or was it Counterspell? And he decided to go for Explosive Runes to try and maybe get a little bit of tempo to stick his Kirin Mage on the board. But Jakattack had the Cabal Crystal Runner, so he sort of had the punish to the line of play that Kin went for with going for getting his Explosive Runes blocked by Counterspell.
Yeah, it's really difficult to say what the strictly correct play is in the mirror a lot of the time, because, you know, it's an even probability that your opponent played Counterspell or Explosive Runes. But luckily for Kin there, he still had the very convenient answer for the Cabal Crystal Runner. And a lot of the times, if you have minions, then the burn is meant to deal with the other minions, and then you win through board pressure. And it seems like Kin has gotten the leg up in that scenario.
Yeah, this matchup snowballs really easily if one player gets minion pressure and the other doesn't, because all of these points of damage that Kin's putting into Jakattack's face means that that's just less burn spells that he needs to find later on in the game to end it. And he's got these sort of options on his side. With a minion played, he can go Secret plus Medusa Valet. If there was no minion played, then he could have played like Mana Worm plus Primordial Glyph and look for something in that regard. He does find get that second counterspell, so that's nice that now he doesn't have to worry about that.
Thinking Kin was thinking that was more likely to be Explosive Runes on Jakattack's side, so he can play Secret plus Valet, but this still works out for him pretty fine. I like the face attack a lot there. Like, the trade would be essentially what Jakattack would do anyway, with a ping The only punish would be Secret plus Valet himself or a Frostbolt.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So instead of taking the trade onto the Kirin Mage, he opts for going with the Cabal Lackey and Secret. So this means that his Mana Worm still challenges the Kirin Mage if it were to attack in, which is sort of the priority target. He's okay with taking the value trade, and he's hoping that he gets enough tempo out of it to turn the board state the following turn. So
yeah, I like the play from Jakattack there because going wide is something that Secret Mage has a more difficult time dealing with, and looking at his hand, it's 2 burn spells. Unfortunately, Kin had a very efficient answer in the discounted Firelands Portal and getting a familiar card from not too long ago.
yeah.
And the 6 health on the Spiteful Smith is actually so annoying for Kin to deal with.
It really is. There's quite a few poor 5-drops now. I feel like Kobolds and Catacombs, one of the main things that it did was severely nerf all of the summon a random minion of this cost effect, because there's so many minions that are understated for their cost.
Yeah. And Kin had the option there to clear the Spiteful with like Secret, Frostbolt, and Valet, but I really like the face hit here. He's recognized that he's had the board advantage for long enough, and he's been able to cash in the points of damage using his minions. And now it's time to start going face. And that's something that we maybe didn't see from Hikage a while ago.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of failure to recognize the point when you need to start just ignoring the board in the mirror. And I think Kin might just get there. He can even get some extra damage by pinging his Gurbashi.
Yeah, that's actually a good amount of extra damage, turning 1 damage into 3 damage effectively, so getting an extra 2. And one thing that to note about Kin's side of play about going face is he also knows that he doesn't have to worry about Ice Block since Jakattack's running Potion to Polymorph.
Right.
And he's seen both counter spells. So there's almost nothing that can block his ability to hit his opponent in the face with spells.
That's a really good feeling if you're a Smart deck.
Yeah, that is great. And Primordial Glyph could pick up another burn spell, and he'd get even closer. And the Gurbashi Berserker is now a must-kill target. So any burn damage at all from Kin will end the game as soon as it's picked up. So I think Jakattack is on the ropes here.
Yeah. Or even just an Ice Block would allow for him to go through 2 turns of pings plus Frostbolt, and that would be enough. And Kin, another key point of his decision-making to start going face there is the fact that he didn't have Aluneth in hand, and it's possible that his opponent didn't have would have it because he's had like some slower turns leading up to turn 6. And Arcanologist.
Is that guaranteed to pick up Ice Block at this point?
So.
It's very close to it.
Or you can just Firelands.
Or you can just get a Firelands Portal. I was actually worried for a second because if it wasn't guaranteed Ice Block, there was a chance that he could die the following turn if there was a counter spell left in the deck, or if he didn't pick up a burn spell from the Primordial Glyph. But he had so many opportunities.
Yeah, so many
that turn. And he gave himself those opportunities because he started going face really early in the game because he understood that window of Jakattack having no way to defend against burn, no Ice Block, no counter spells. Outside of random generation from Primordial Glyph, Jakattack would have no way to defend. So well played by Kin, I have to say.
Yeah, I think he has very good understanding of the matchup, shows a bit of experience, and now that means he's up 2-0.
Yeah.
Putting Jakattack on the ropes, so that leaves only the Spiteful Priest for Kin, and that's a deck that I feel has been doing pretty well on ladder.
Especially when you're in a position where you only have to win once in 3 attempts with it, because it's a deck that has the potential for huge swing turns with Spiteful Summoner, because you're going to get some type of big minion from it. And so as long as you just have 1 game out of the 3 where you draw that curve, which is what Spiteful Priest does, just curves right up the top and presents too big of threats for the opponent to deal with.
Spiteful Priest is actually somewhat flexible compared to other curve decks because aside from having your amazingly powerful like per mana cost minions, you have Dustbreaker to try and deal back against boards where you kind of fell behind in the early game, and you also have Draconid Operative, which can discover you some cheat mechanism from your opponent's deck. And interesting that he's actually running 1 Lich King in the Spiteful Priest, which I feel is quite greedy.
It's a little greedy, but it's such a control buster.
Yeah.
Lich King is sort of that big tech card that you want to put in when you expect to be facing the bigger decks. And it's a greedy deck in itself. And you talked about Dustbreaker, and running the Dragon version also allows you to have access to Netherspite Historian, which, since Dustbreaker is a class card, has a higher percentage chance of being an option from Netherspite Historian. So it's actually, you know, good odds for you to be able to get additional Dustbreakers if you can find Netherspite Historian early on. So it definitely has a good edge against faster decks. But this is
Quite the opener.
This is probably one of the dream starts if you're a Secret Mage player. And it's all about getting on the board early, because outside of Dustbreaker, there is no removal from the Priest.
Right, so Kin actually there drew up quite a good curve of his own, but just because Jakattack had such a punishing opener, it means that Kin is probably going to be on the try and draw Duskbreaker plan.
Yeah.
Although Jakattack's next turns might be a bit slower if he doesn't draw into a second secret, because that would be the absolute nuts.
But that damage that he's putting on early is going to stick for the most part, because Kin is not going to really have many opportunities to just kind of heal up as the game goes on.
Right.
Because other, sort of the control priest decks, they're removing minions and then being able to heal up. Whereas Kin, his only way to fight if he doesn't have Dustbreaker is to just play big minions of his own and then fight for the board the next turn. And so just being able to have that sort of slew of damage is going to help Jakattack as this game goes late. But he is drawing a little bit clunky. He's going to have a dead turn soon if he doesn't start drawing these tempo. And just playing out the kin0531 Mage does give Kin a little room to operate, but not much. He's just going to have to Fairy Dragon plus heal here.
Right, and it makes a lot of sense to play kin0531 Mage over the Arcane Intellect there, because if you just Intellect, you give Kin essentially the trade with the Glimmerroot in to develop his own minion, and then you start being the one who has to answer. So this way, he sticks a minion unless there's Dustbreaker. And in this case, there isn't, so he's still able to get that incremental minion damage, even though he ideally would still have a Mana Worm on board.
Yikes.
Yeah, I think Kin might have to take a slow turn and hunt for the Duskbreaker here using the Netherspite.
Trying to think if there's any other good options that he might want. But
I think the Operative does just directly contest the Crystal Runner, and you can take the trade up on the kin0531 Mage, but Jakattack has Fireball, and I guess if you're thinking Fireball is the only answer, then I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would have liked Netherspite Historian better there, because you have more opportunities. You can still play Push into Polymorph in that instance to try and stop some of that tempo. But opposite, just go for the board pressure and hope that there's no pressure on the other side from Jakattack, or he didn't have Fireball and actually chooses not to Fireball, but instead just present the threat.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense given that he's running out of gas. And the game has been very much Jakattack playing 2 minions into Kin playing 1 that beats one of those minions. And so every turn, Jakattack is able to get 1 attack in. And because these mage minions have like rather high attack stats, it stacks up really quickly. So if Jakattack's able to pick up some additional burn off the Arcane Intellect, we could be looking at the game very soon. Ooh, that is spicy.
That is.
However, the ping on the Operative is very tempting. Then again, if you just draw Frostbolt and your opponent isn't able to heal, that's the game. So from this point on, Kin is thinking he needs to be jamming that hero power every turn, or maybe not.
He's just going for the pressure route. Is there anything that Free from Amber can get that could help him? There's no Charged Devilsaur.
Drag Light Lord? No, wait. Is it only priest minions?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. So, yeah.
You are on fire.
Now he needs something.
Yeah, Charged Devilsaur isn't enough. That's probably just the game. Jakattack does not run Ice Block. So...
no, he runs the Potion of Polymorph.
So maybe Counterspell from the
But
Dragon Operative.
Grand Archivist could pull. Oh no, he only runs 1 copy of Free from Amber. So that means that. Oh no, he runs 2 copies of Free from Amber. So Grand Archivist could have pulled Free from Amber
Into.
Light Lord.
Yeah.
But that was a very fringe case, and Jakattack will be able to clean this up. And the early pressure of his minions.
Even going for the second ball instead
Yeah.
of the ping. So
Just showing him who's the real boss in this game.
Yeah.
And puts himself on the board with the win. So starting to come back. And that turn 1 that he was able to have, sticking that Mana Worm, getting in a lot of damage, and then being able to sort of ride the tempo of that Mana Worm and just keep sticking minions, eventually led Jakattack to be able to have an easy finish with some burn damage.
Yeah, Mana Worm can carry as it so often does, and it's also Jakattack's
Game, and it's always cool to see players like that.
and to hit your opponent's face.
And to hit your opponent's
with a
face.
weapon 6 times. to
He
win.
and the funny thing is, he just said, I just equipped my sword. And just went, I'm guessing he meant like Uther's sword, or
Yeah,
like
Ashbringer, I
Ashbringer
guess.
into Uther. So that doesn't seem anticlimactic to me. That seems pretty cool. As a pirate warrior connoisseur, I do enjoy hitting my opponents in the face with weapons.
TJ approved. So the back
And it's
And
always
to
cool to see
hit-
players like that.
and to hit your opponent's face.
And to hit your opponent's
with a
face.
weapon 6 times. To
He
win.
and the funny thing is, he just said, I just equipped my sword. And just went, I'm guessing he meant like Uther's sword, or
Yeah,
like
Ashbringer, I guess.
into Uther. So that doesn't seem anticlimactic to me. That seems pretty cool. As a pirate warrior connoisseur, I do enjoy hitting my opponents in the face with weapons.
TJ approved. So the bans have come in, and as we expected, it's a double Warlock ban. We expected like a possibility of Jakattack going for something else, but it seems like he's come to the same conclusion, because that control OTK Paladin, even though on paper it seems like it should be able to beat a slower deck like a control Warlock, it's just that you're not able to get the coins off the Burgly Bully to do the whole OTK.
Yeah, it's called OTK Paladin, but realistically, the amount of times, even against slower decks, that you actually are able to accomplish the OTK is pretty low. But the deck does have just a lot of tools to be able to get through a lot of matchups.
Right.
Just being able to remove a lot of stuff, and having the minions and the pressure with cards like Tyrion and Zoth, as we see, and even Uther can apply pressure late game with just the buffed up hero power. Can put a lot of pressure on your opponent, and it's kind of the threat of it as well. If you know that the OTK is possible, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to maneuver around Burgly Bullies, and then later on in the game, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to maneuver around the hero powers and make sure you remove it every turn. So there is that added layer of sort of psychological warfare that you play with your opponent.
Yeah, that's right. If the person playing against the OTK Paladin doesn't have that much experience against it, it could be possible that they expend too many resources earlier on, trying to avoid the possibility of losing to OTK, and then just lose straight up to the normal win condition, which is just control. And against aggressive decks, the most important card for the control paladin is, well, it used to be having Inequality Consecrate Clear, but nowadays it's Cult Arms, because you can pull out Dirty Rat and 2 friends.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sydney Tour Stop. I'm TJ, joined by Gia. I'm here relaxing in my my throne, my casting chair.
Okay, you've decided on chair now. That's what we're calling it.
A throne, actually.
Throne.
Throne is the only term I will accept.
A frozen throne?
It's actually quite warm and cozy by the fire here.
Our very realistic fire.
Real fire. Trust me. But we're about to get back underway with the series between Jakattack and Kin. Currently, Jakattack down 2-1 in the series, but momentum is in his favor as he was able to take the victory with the Secret Mage over the Spiteful Priest. But Kin still has 2 opportunities left to win with the deck, so we'll see if he can get the job done.
Yeah, we were just saying a while ago that Spiteful Priest just feels like one of those decks that given 3 shots, it's gonna get there at some point.
Yeah.
So now we're going into the mirror.
Mirror. So this one is weird because both these decks lack removal outside of Dustbreaker. That's the only piece of removal that these decks have. So the way they win is just by sticking a board, and kind of the first player to stick a board usually wins because they can kind of snowball from there, especially if they can get it out of range of Dustbreaker,
Right.
that 4 health and above. So definitely kind of an interesting matchup to watch. But kind of fun because it gets explosive very quickly.
Yeah, a big tool to getting out of Duskbreaker range is the Shadow Ascendant, which we can see from Ken. He has it. And on top of the perfect answer for the Northshire Cleric, the Fairy Dragon, by the way, not present in Jakattack's list. So maybe Ken built this with a bit of the mirror in mind.
The turn to Hero Power Face and Emo. Jakattack knows what's up.
Yeah, a lot of the time that carries a lot less weight when there's nothing on the board because you see that from like the control priest types.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a bit of spitefulness to it because
Spitefulness.
Maybe it's just spite. Bit of spite to it because Jakattack is falling way behind even this early on. The Twilight Acolyte, pretty welcome sight just to have something on board to contest. But if he doesn't pick up a Duskbreaker pretty soon, Kin's gonna run away with it.
He can scale up the curve though, because Twilight Drake into Dragon and Operative into Spiteful Summoner. Spiteful Summoner is the way you can sort of turn things around and, you know, get that leg up. Because if you have Spiteful Summoner and your opponent doesn't, and you pull a big minion out, how is the Spiteful Summoner Priest on the other side going to deal with Tyrannus?
True enough, but actually the Shadow Ascendant pickup was huge there because the 1 extra health and attack makes it so that Kin would have to trade in his whole board if he wants to get rid of that Twilight Acolyte, which is not a very enticing proposition, so I assume he's just going to be leaving it up. So if the Shadow Ascendant lands on the Talon Priest, it's pretty huge for the same reason.
Yeah. It does.
Ooh.
So just sort of getting out of range just slightly.
Ooh, Shadow Priest rather as the pickup next turn could be a huge swing on board as well. Okay, well, Jakattack actually decided to get rid of the Ascendant instead. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he's playing Spiteful Summoner next turn almost 100% of the time, just because of how big of a swing it is. And since he's the one that reaches turn 6 first, since he was on the play instead of the coin on turn 1, having attacker's advantage in that situation is pretty big deal. So I think he realized that it was almost always going to be Spiteful Summoner next turn, so he just took off what was the biggest threat on the board that he could kill. So I think that's good. And otherwise, he just would have traded into the Nether Spice Terrain, which I don't think has much impact. So let's see. Mind Control.
Yeah, the play definitely made a lot of sense because you can't really go for greed here when you can just get a Deathwing Dragonlord, which will be pulling out, well, for now just a 4-1 if it dies, but don't think it's dying anytime soon.
So this is where I said things can get explosive because another Spiteful Summoner picked up. He's going to get Mind Control. The disparity between 10 drops is actually quite big. There's some 10 drops.
Go from 6-6
the old gods. Yeah.
Like barely over half the size.
Yeah. So Kin still has a little bit more board pressure, but that Deathwing Dragonlord could be a pretty big deal. And Jakattack's going to just try and protect it, draw some additional cards, and start swinging away.
Yeah, Deathbreaker, although it's not the cleanest, it's actually a pretty convenient way to at least deal with the 5-2 because there's literally no other way.
Yeah.
And that removes the damage that Kin needs to try and race the face here. And so he's put in the defensive spot, but there's just no convenient way of dealing with it.
He can go for the Cabal Song Stealer and just trade into the Deathwing Dragon Lord to try and prevent some of this extra damage that's going to be coming through from the dragons on the backswing.
Sure,
But his
yeah.
hand is clunky.
Yeah, and in these matchups, it really doesn't feel good to be trading your whole board away like that, because the same problem repeats itself. Your opponent simply restocks the board, and then you're one answer short. All right, and Grand Archivist picked up as well.
That's the sort of the next power card in the Spiteful Priest arsenal.
Yeah, the curve is strong with this one, so Mind Control is insane. Free from Amber most of the time is insane as well. Okay. I mean, we still take a 6.
Yeah,
sure.
Effectively, well, I guess it's not a free 6/6 because the spell is actually used up. So Free from Amber is that copy is not going to be in the deck anymore. But yeah, just the tempo that it gives you.
Oh, King Togwaggle. Didn't see it.
Ooh.
Certain match. Okay.
Obsidian Statue is fantastic, and of course,
Thing is,
Free from Amber is.
Yeah, the Archivist sticks, so
yeah.
Mind Control could be taking that away. So if the Mind Control lands on the Cabal Song Stealer, it's not like Kin's out of the woods yet either.
Yeah. Jakattack can just silence this and keep pushing damage. I think that's exactly what he's going to do.
So a very quick... I mean, I'm calling it over because I don't see any way that Kin can come back. Do you?
No.
Right. So quick and explosive series. That's the way we like them.
Yeah. Gonna steal it up, and that looks like we're going to a game 5. Unless Kin can find a miracle, but I don't think there's any possible way. That's when you just pick Temporis and let your opponent just have some fun.
Yeah, and their first turn.
Yeah.
And then kill you on the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Duskbreaker. Too little, too late. And Kin doing the proper thing as a Hearthstone player and going through all your possible discovery options before you concede.
Yeah. So despite Kin having what looked like a pretty good start, Jakattack was able to stifle the pressure and start the pressure train of his own. Going first in that matchup, especially if your opponent uses the coin early to try and contest, is a big deal, because you being able to play those powerful turns earlier than your opponent, and being able to have sort of that attacker's advantage is a big deal. And so now we're going to game number 5, and we talked about how if Spiteful Priest is given enough opportunities, it's going to win. But if you're going against a Spiteful Priest yourself, it kind of cancels that out a little bit.
That's
because
true.
They're going to find a win too sometimes. So it all comes down to that final matchup, which is going to be the Spiteful Priest for Kin versus the OTK Control Paladin.
Yeah, and I feel like Jakattack might struggle a bit with this one, because as we said, this is really a control buster list from Kin here. So I expect that even though Kin is feeling the familiar possible reverse sweep jitters, he should still be pretty calm in this matchup.
Yeah, it's maybe Control Paladin has some game because they can remove board states, but this deck is just, for the Spiteful Priest, is just full of big threats. And also the fact that your opponent plays Tyrion, you just slam a Grand Archivist and steal it away. Yeah, so it's not incredibly often that happens, but you can, cater your board state to playing around those types of scenarios if you're the Spiteful Priest. So definitely just things to keep in mind as we get ready for that final matchup.
Yeah, Spiteful Priest packs so much value in it, despite being able to curve out early, which makes it one of the most flexible, aggressively oriented decks in the meta. So to think about it, like, the Control Paladin only runs 2 equality, and then the rest of the removal is, I guess, weapon-based and Pyromancer-based. But Pyromancer can only deal, 2 points of damage, conveniently, and then the weapon only deals with 1 thing at a time. But the Priest minions scale up way too quickly for them to deal with that. So I'm thinking that Jakattack's going to be struggling quite a bit here.
And a lot of times you have to use equality on a single Spiteful Summoner.
True.
Because it's a 4/4 plus whatever body, a lot of times at least like 6/6. If you get Mind Control, it goes all the way up to those some of those 12/12 bodies with Deathwing, the Deathwings, Tyrannus.
Right, I think the only thing Kin has to be careful about here is not overextending with the Spiteful Summoner plus another thing. Usually just Spiteful and the thing it brings out is enough to threaten the Paladin into having to remove.
And it looks like Kin just 3-kept because he was presented with Fair Dragon, Northshire Cleric, and Spiteful Summoner. Also picks up Twilight Drake in the mix, so this is one of those good opening curve hands for Kin. It also picks up Curious Glimmerroot, and since deck lists are open for these players, it means that he should have 100% accuracy on Curious Glimmerroot, unless he forgets.
Yeah, and Jakattack, I was gonna say he didn't have the call to arms here, so after the Rallying Blade charges are used up, he might have a difficult time coming back, but he picked it up here, so it seems like we have a game in our hands. Double Spiteful though, that is looking quite thick.
Agnaros Lightlord also just threats for days.
To be fair though, the Rallying Blade puts in quite a bit of work here, able to clear off, I was going to say 2-3 attack minions, but I guess Jakattack, having picked up the Tar Creeper, recognizes that it's more important to try and stifle his opponent's refill.
And also to keep in mind, as we mentioned earlier on in the series, Kin has the Lich King thrown into his Spiteful Priest list, which means that he just has one extra threat. Which is also sort of that control buster type of card where, you know, if you get Death Grip, you can pull a big threat out of your opponent's list. Sometimes Death Coil can just help you push that additional extra damage later on in the game. Army of the Dead, since this deck is almost all minions, can also be pretty fantastic. So there's just a ton of powerful tools that you can get from that card, especially against control lists like this one that Jakattack's running.
Yeah, and Kin had a very interesting decision on what to silence there. The Loot Hoarder was actually one of the last ones on my mind because I feel like the Pyro being left up is the scariest in terms of like what he can, the trades he can take. But Kin actually values stifling his opponent's card draw here.
Yeah, that one's interesting to me too because Jakattack also does run some spells that he could couple with it. I guess it's one turn before Spike Retreat would be a threat, so it would be basically just adaptation.
You don't want to equality this. So.
Yeah,
okay.
You definitely don't want to quality that. So maybe that's what he was thinking. If you have adaptation, okay, you got me. But if you don't, then... Whoa!
Oh my gosh.
He was hoping for Spiteful Summoner since he saw a card kept.
Yes.
And he knew it wasn't played before turn 5. So it's probably Spiteful Summoner because you keep that card in almost every matchup. Like 99.9% of the time. But gets quite punished. And he also figured, well, I have a lot of quite poor minions in my deck, so if he took Curious Glimmerroot, one of those cards, and has to equality just to set up for these trades.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Equality there might look premature, but the thing is, if he hadn't used it, these two minions could take the value trades, and then Jakattack doesn't have a proc for the equality anyway.
Yeah.
And he must be heartbroken to see that the Spiteful was there anyway. And
whoa.
This is...
I guess there's not that many 10 drops, so getting that twice in a row is not that crazy.
Yeah, it's like 11 10 drops or something like that.
Yeah.
Still a 1-1-2-1. Still though, gosh, if Jakattack doesn't pick up a second equality or possibly Sunkeeper Tarim, this might be lights out.
Yeah, and he's going to go for the second one. Seeing the first equality allows him to just sort of go in on this big aggressive board.
And he even saw the second Pyro actually off of this call to arms, so clearing like this, yeah, equality just doesn't deal with every single minion on board. Okay,
Ooh.
Now we're talking. Oh my goodness, that was the only card that could have brought Jakattack back in this game, I'm quite sure. And again, taking the draw first because it didn't matter.
It picks up Uther, so Jakattack does have some game as the series progresses.
Wait, how is this still happening? All right, so Kin now running out of resources. Of course, Operative can help a lot, but his big Spiteful turns have been used up, and we were saying maybe he should just try and not overextend too much, but maybe he was thinking, all right, double Pyro out of the way. How does he deal with this? Might be that he forgot about Tarim.
Maybe not forgot about Tarim, but said, okay, if you have Tarim, then you beat me. Okay. Sort of when you play these sort of faster decks, more aggressive decks, a lot of times it's better to just expect your opponent not to have it and sort of force them to have the answer. Because he would have just won the game, not on the spot, but very close to on the spot if Sunkeeper Term didn't come out.
Yeah, that's true. And he did have to trade 2 minions on that turn, so... yeah, just kind of unfortunate the way things worked out there for Kin. But he could still... I guess drawing into Free from Amber from here. Or Archivist.
Yeah, Archivist could be good, but since he doesn't have a full control of the board, Archivist doesn't guarantee if it pulls Mind Control to steal a valuable minion. A lot of times Archivist is best when you can sort of isolate those big targets. I wonder which one this is.
Yeah, and that's one that fits pretty conveniently into the curve and can help him trade off the Tyrant conveniently. He does give up a coin to Jakattack, but I feel like at this point the OTK is the last thing you're worried about.
I don't know about that.
Well, the thing is, you've seen the Tyram and double Pyromancer already. So I feel that he thinks his board is safe from this point on. And it still takes quite a while before...
he just needs a coin and an adaptation. He wins the game.
That's still like... I mean, Kin will never play spell here,
Yeah.
right? So, oh my...
Well, the Burgley Bully is
Yeah,
dead,
it's gone,
so it doesn't matter
yeah.
now. It gets you Sero, so that's just eking out some additional value. And that's the thing. We talk about how Jakattack, okay, he stabilized the board. He picked up the Sunkeeper Terram, but Kin still has Draconin Operative in his deck. He still has Lich King in his deck. Still has Free from Amber, Mind Controls, Grand Archivist. So even if you remove the 2 Spiteful Summoner pushes, you still have to worry about all of these sort of medium-sized, and then in Kin's case, big threats. So it gets pretty tough. And Nazoth is going to bring back Loot Hoarders and the Plated Beetles. But
So-
still under a ton of pressure.
Even though he's able to heal up and draw into more stuff, he still can't deal with the board entirely. I don't think Kin is feeling much pressure to trade here. The only thing that punishes not trading is like Stonehill into second Tyram, I think. Because he can't clear off anything, he can't prevent Spike Steed anyway.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a possibility for an OTK if he draws adaptation or double adaptation. He would need 12 mana total.
Yeah.
No, he would need 13 mana total actually, because it would be 8 from Hero Powers, 3 from Beardo, and 2 from the adaptations. And so he doesn't have enough coins. Auction Master Beardo plus 2 coins plus adaptation would be enough because you only need 12, and the 2 coins give you 12. But no Burgley Bully, so he's got to fight through this board the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, just goes to show how difficult it is to land the OTK, which is why we're more used to calling this deck Control Paladin, because that's how it wins the game more often.
Beardo kind of just acts as, well, if my opponent lets me, then I'll OTK him. But if not, then sometimes I can just play him as a 3-mana 3/4. So, and 2 Laughing Sisters picked up. I think he was probably hoping for something.
Nightmare.
Yes, sir. Awakens. Dream can also be pretty good if you're to get through a big taunt, Tyrion or something that comes from Stonehold Defender. Equality picked up, but currently no way to...
No, Equality Drake is insane here.
Oh, Equality Primordial Drake. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
Oh my goodness. Did he get the Drake off of his Stonehill? I think
he did
so,
get the Drake off the Stonehold Defender, so I completely forgot about that, and that's a good pickup. He didn't have any other good options from that Stonehold Defender, if I remember correctly, and knowing that both Wild Pyromancers are gone, it's really the only pickup that makes sense, but...
Yeah, this is insane. That was pretty much the only card that Jakattack could have used to get back into this game. Maybe Spike Steed plus the weapon charge could have stalled for a bit longer, but the problem would have persisted the next turn, so this might mean we could see the OTK potentially.
He needs to stick 1 hero power, and if he sticks 1 hero power, then the following turn he could do it. With hero power,
That's
Beardo,
crazy.
coin, hero power, adaptation, hero power, so...
I don't think I've seen it in a like highly competitive setting yet. Did that happen in Copa or Germany?
I think it may have. I probably played like 50 to 70 games of OTK Paladin. I think I only did it like twice in the whole time I played that. So a very low percentage of the time. And I think in one of the times that I did it, I also would have won regardless if I had OTK'd him or not. It's just more fun to do it that way. So, but he's still got to fight through some of this stuff. And still got to think about mind control as well. But Burgly Bully, if he gets a coin.
Third Tarim, we take those. Yeah, it seems like Jakattack has stabilized decently well here.
And I doubt Kin will use the mind control, but he might feel like he has to. But if he does, he dies.
Yeah, what he needs to do is get something good off of the operative, but I'm not sure what saves him. That's an individual card here. Definitely not the spells.
Not the spells, but not the weapon either, really, because you can't really push through much. But I think he understands that he has to take it because he knows there's a coin in the hand. He probably knows his Beardo. His deck is super small right now. Jakattack, he doesn't have many cards left, so he's just gonna have to fight through this board, and maybe he can try and go through fatigue because N'Zoth is gone. But it's going to be so hard because he has to kill the hero power every single turn.
Oh, it's
he left the hero power up, so he gets the OTK anyway.
Yeah.
See, I was just talking about how he can't leave a hero power up. And Jakattack, look, he's got a smirk on his face because he knows that it's going to happen. And he just nods.
Man.
And gets the Wind Fury on the Beardo to top it all off.
I'm sure there's some handful of viewers that still haven't seen this actual interaction work yet.
Yeah.
So enjoy, guys. Jakattack completing the reverse sweep on Kin here. And we were saying that Kin, well, you guys know his Spiteful Priest not too difficult.
Yeah.
But sometimes the way things line up is just that.
Yeah. Reverse sweep to finish it all off with the OTK. And I was just mentioning, he just needs to stick one hero power, and I forgot that the hero power was already on the board, and we also talked about how Priest has no removal outside of Dustbreaker. So, well navigated. I think the Sunkeeper Tarim and the Equality got him out of those sticky situations, but that's just how the deck's built.
Yeah.
At the end of that game, Jakattack, I think, only had 2 or 3 cards left in his deck.